Hello and welcome to Virtual Investor Conferences. On behalf of OTC Markets, we are very pleased you have joined us for the Precious Metals and Critical Minerals Conference. Our next presentation of the day is from Harena Rare Earths. Please note, you may submit questions for the presenter in the box to the left of the slides. You can also view a company's availability for a one-on-one meeting by clicking Book a Meeting in the top toolbar. At this point, I'm very pleased to welcome Ivan Murphy, Executive Chairman of Harena Rare Earths, which trades on the OTCQB venture market under the symbol CRMNF and on the LSE under the symbol HREE. Welcome, Ivan.
Thanks very much. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it. Good to see you, Greg. Thanks all for coming in and having a look at our presentation. I'm really excited to take you through it. Rare earths, critical minerals are without question the most important space in mining right now, the most talked about, the most in demand. And I think the great country of America is leading this diversification away from Chinese supply. And I'll talk a bit about that later. So I think that they are definitely making all the right moves. And both the UK and the European governments could probably catch up a bit there, because this situation with China is not sustainable if you want to build what you want to build in your AI, in your defense, and right across the spectrum. Rare earths specifically have become the invisible infrastructure of power now, and they are now becoming the key wrestling match for all those who want to develop further, both defense and AI. So look, our company is listed in London originally, and just for the last 2 weeks, we've been listed on the OTC. This has been the first step on capital markets ladder in the US, as we tilt our strategy towards US partnerships, which I'll come on to in a second. Here's a disclaimer. So what are we? We're a Madagascar-based project. We are not an exploration company. This is the first thing I always say. We have a proven 606,000 tons of total rare earth oxides, making us one of the single biggest rare earth reserves outside of China. What's really important about us compared to our competitors or other rare earth companies is that we have ionized clays. Now, this is the fundamental difference and one of the fundamental natural advantages that the Chinese have. They have rare earths existing in clay. And what does that mean? It means really simply is I'm not going to be digging, blowing up stuff, or crushing rocks. I am treating clay over the first 5 to 10 meters across our license area in the very north of Madagascar. That allows for very good remediation, much lower environmental impact, obviously, and also a much easier separation process. Rare earths aren't really that rare. What's rare is to separate them efficiently and then create usable product that you need across the spectrum for technology and defense especially. So I think these are really critical things about us. Not an exploration project and not mining in the blowing up, crushing rock sense. It's a heap process which we do on site, and I'll take you through a little bit about that in a couple of slides. We're a small company that's just coming on the radar at the moment, so we're a bit underdiscovered. This is why we wanted the listing. This is why I jumped at the chance to do this presentation today. And so what we've done over these last months is just done a big restructuring. The company was listed through an RTO in London in March. I got back involved. I've been involved with this project since 2010. So I have 15 years waiting for this extraordinary moment now, with critical minerals really finding center stage as they have to do, and especially rare earths. We have a couple of key US investors, including Wexford Capital out of Connecticut, Fondren, which is a big family office out of Houston, Rab Capital in London, one of the longest standing mining investor institutions in the UK, run by Philip Richards, who's a legendary mining investor here in London, where I'm based. And that's helped us, put together a really strong base for as we grow. We're going to need more money. And now we've got really well-funded institutions on that side and lots of demand from people. As I'm sure you can appreciate, no problem raising money in this space now for good projects. And we have one of those. So I think we're really well positioned now to go to the next stages. We've got a pre-feasibility which is completed. That's being submitted to the government at the moment for our license upgrade, for our exploitation, permis d'exploitation, as they say in French, is what they speak in Madagascar. And that just is the next stage in licensing for us to move into production. So that will be the next sort of milestone for us. And I'll come on to that in a moment. What is the project? Well, that's an AI CGI of what it will look like when we're in production. Here's a location map to give you a context where Madagascar is off the coast of Africa. And our project is in the very north, which is a huge plus because we're away from the major urban centers, but also we have easy access to the port and lots of salt water. Salt water forms part of our processing along with ammonia phosphate. So, you know, that's a key free element to our processing, which we're really happy about. What goes wrong in Africa a lot of the time is logistics, of course. You know, the road networks across Africa are very challenging. We just have a short run down to 2 key ports from which we hope to be able to, or which we will, ship our concentrate for refining from there. So that's a big plus for us. Again, some reference to not an exploration project, and I've covered that point about the ionized clays, which is the 3rd box on the left. We own 100% working interest in our project. We have not outsourced, we have not sold down, we have not farmed in or farmed out. For now, we control it 100%, and we're moving forward on that basis, looking to identify partners, which I'll come on to now shortly. Here's a snapshot, was already mentioned by Greg in the intro. We're listed in London, we're listed on the OTCQB, we've got a very kind of focused and decent institutional shareholder base already, and hopefully more to come. And then you'll see here on this right box, SGS, which is one of the, you know, the world's leading independent resource analysts who gave us this independent JORC resource. And a quote from them: I've been in this business for quite some time, and it's very hard to get them to say stuff like this. You know, they've really identified our project as one of the things that can really contribute to take the pressure off the situation with the Chinese dominating this sector. So we think that's a key thing and a key independent analysis of our project, some of which I'll refer to later when we get onto those slides. So we've been tilting towards the US. The US has really got on the front foot in this space, which we think is brilliant. They've made investments through the DFC, the Development Finance Corporation, out of DC. They've just taken in a new CEO, Ben Black, out of Wall Street, and another guy. So they've really gone for it there, and I think it's brilliant. You know, they've got a really focused strategy, get control, get involved in some projects so that the US doesn't have to depend on China for its rare earth supply to build its military and all the other things that is so important for all of us in the Western world. So we've started an engagement with them. They have made direct investments, which are well documented, and I'll come on to those in my space already, in the rare earth space, and in Africa, and in South America, and Brazil. And I'll talk about those a little later. In the last 2 weeks, I've been in DC, which is some of those photos on the left. I was at the State Department, meeting those from the Africa desk. And on the right, you'll see me in those photos with the new Minister of Mines in Madagascar and some of his team and some of our own team. Alan Mulligan, our executive technical director, is featured there in those photographs. Alan has a phenomenal experience in mining across Africa, specifically in rare earths in Uganda, but also bringing graphite projects into production right the way from exploration, commissioning plants, and delivering product. So he's really well placed to help us drive through to production here, and we're very lucky to have him. There's not a lot of people who understand rare earths. That's the other issue about the noise in the market, and something I'll hopefully help educate you a little bit on if you're not familiar with the differences. But we can talk a bit about that when I get to those slides. So this is just to illustrate that we're in negotiations, we're in great discussions with American agencies, and we've got a great relationship in country where we're moving along on a number of fronts, particularly social and site preparation, and I'll come on to some of that in a minute. What's the strategic importance of assets like this for the US specifically? Well, it's really, really easy to explain that. The Chinese supply and their control over that allows them to turn the tap on and off and pretty much drive people crazy around that. And that's their prerogative. They've made a really long-term plan around this back as early as the late 90s, early 2000s. And so they've really got the jump, I would say, on the Western world. And so these assets and the opportunity to, you know, share these assets and work these assets in partnerships with the US, I think is really exciting. And we've had a very good response and a very warm welcome when we've been in DC with this project over these last couple of months. So that's been really great. They need it, we need it, the US needs it, especially for defense, but also to build out AI and pretty much everything. The other thing, which I don't think is talked about enough, but I did see an article this week in the Wall Street Journal or the Financial Times, the robotics space is about to explode even further. I'm not just talking about the guy who will make your coffee when you're at home in the morning. That will be great. I look forward to that. But actually robots in the very specialist sense, both in defense and in other utilizations. And that's going to require a huge amount more of these heavy rare earths, these magnet rare earths, which our project is dominated with. And that's where we also have a big sort of box tick, is we have primarily a basket of heavy rare earths, and they're the ones you want for sure. What our plan is, and our strategy is really clear. We've been very open about this. We just want to be able to provide feedstock into the US for refining. We won't be refining in Madagascar, that wouldn't be appropriate. And also we will therefore create a concentrate and ship that for refining up to the US with a US partner. And that's the strategy for now. I wanted to talk about investments that have been made already by the US in a lot of rare earth projects. I've just picked out these 4 key ones because I think they're really, really relevant. MP Materials used to be Molycorp. I remember them when they were Molycorp back in 2010. They actually wanted to buy this project off me back then, and for lots of reasons that didn't happen. Molycorp morphed into another thing and is now MP Materials, which is the absolute, blue chip leading light in this space in the US. And they've had a huge investment from the DoD. The DoD have given them a floor pricing. All makes sense to me. I think it's a smart thing to do. And I think other Western governments could be following suit in that space. You've got to get into the private sector to make this work. So MP has had a huge response from its investors and is now a multi-billion-dollar company listed on the NYSE. So Critical Minerals Corp, they did a 10-year supply agreement with some US government funding. The effect of that you'll see when I show a later slide. Aclara Resources in Brazil, much more similar to us in terms of where they are. They got a $5 million investment from the DFC, as did Makongo, which is an African project, again, in a similar state to where we are in terms of their progression. So we're now moving into our production plan. We are a resource, we've now permitted, and now this next phase for us is to move into production, which I'll talk a little bit about on another slide. But this shows you just how proactive the US is being, and we want to be part of that conversation with them, and we are. This will show you this incredible impact of that support on these companies and their market capitalizations. There's us on the left, hardly visible in comparison to these others, and our project would stand up against Makongo's or certainly Aclara's any day of the week, and I don't think anybody would argue that. So look, we're coming out into the center here. We're just coming out into the light. We've only been listed in the UK since March, a restructuring in August, and we just got our OTC listing 2 weeks ago. So, we are at our infancy in terms of gaining support and gaining wider recognition for our project, our team, and where we're going with this company. Here's a little project overview. It's kind of summarizing, I think, a lot of what I've said. We have a significant resource. We won't do any more exploration in the short term because we don't need to prove more resource. However, depending on who we partner with, they may well want us to do that because they will have a longer term macro view. We've got a massive resource, which is plenty to be getting on with. And so we're pleased about that. We think we've got a great geographical location in a reasonably stable country, specifically in the context of Africa, something that's very workable there. We've got a good, other big mining companies are working down in Madagascar. You've got Energy Fuels, big US listed company, bought a big project. It's got $1 billion capex to do to get that project into production in Madagascar. Rio Tinto, the massive UK miner, has a big project in the south of the island. So, we're well in behind some bigger names, which is great, and that's all good for everybody. There's a great comment here on the top. I'm going to read it out from SGS. The Ampasindava, I can pronounce it, tricky to do it if you're not used to it, but that's where our project is. That's the name of the area and of our project. Ionic Clay Project displays a pervasive and well-balanced rare earth distribution that is prevalent throughout the deposit. That's to say, is we've loads of rare earths here. The deposit includes appreciable amounts of the critical magnet rare earths, dysprosium, neodymium, praseodymium, and terbium, as defined by the US Department of Energy. So that's the independent study that SGS did to give us this resource, to qualify it, and to give us the scale of what we have. So that will show you that, not surprisingly, we've had a very good response and have had lots of really useful and fascinating interaction in the US. Here's a bit of a target project timeline. It looks pretty good to me. I was going through it yesterday with the team. I think we're well within these kind of limits. We have our OTC listing just completed, as I say, barely 2 weeks ago. Pre-feasibility study, that's completed and now being submitted to the ministry for our next upgrade of our licensing. With that, we'll do a proof of concept, start that off at the early next year, start to move towards a pilot plant next year. And because of the nature of our project, which isn't always the case with iron ore or gold projects and things like that, our lead time to get into some useful production is quite short. So it's about 2 years from where we are now, give or take. And that's very quick in our business. And that, I think, will time well, because one of the issues around rare earths is refining, right? Refining is very specialist, and there's not enough capacity in refining in the US or in Western countries generally. So I think with a big focus on building out the refining capacity and capability, I think we'll dovetail nicely with our feedstock to meet that ability to refine. So one of the challenges now is if you had a lot of concentrate, you wouldn't quite have enough refining to be done outside of China, who dominate also the refining space. There's a French company, Solvay, a legendary, very old company listed over here in Europe. They have a very specialist process, have been at it for a long time. They're building capacity for further refining. So I think we'll play well into that. And yeah, I think this sort of timeline is reasonable, and I think we're comfortable with that. Here's a quick look at our infrastructure and where we are. This is a real plus, because within the African context, if you have your project and it's in the middle of Africa, it's super challenging to meet logistics that can get your product out. So we don't have that issue. We're on the coast. And I'm going to kind of push on a bit because I want to leave some time for these questions, which I see are coming in there. But here's the thing for those of you who have, different, maybe more technical background. My executive technical director is not on the call, so I will do my best here. I'm capable of doing this, but normally he covers this, and obviously I can do it to a certain extent. What's great is what I love about it is simple. This heap leach pad is effectively, for want of a better term, a plastic lining. We take clay on top of it. We treat that on top of it with our ammonium sulfate leach and our saline leach, which comes from our salt water nearby. And then we move that product back to where we took it from, and we start the remediation process. So we're doing it in these squares. That AI in the left corner there, I love that. We just got that done last week. It makes me really excited because that's what it's going to look like. So what it really is, it's trucks moving clay into these pads, which you'll see in the background of that photograph, treating, bringing that clay and that product back after we've taken out what we need, and then start the remediation process. Mother Nature, given the climate there, does most of the work. The ammonia sulfate itself will obviously help. That's effectively a fertilizer. And apologies, I think I said ammonium phosphate earlier. That's not what we're using, obviously. It's ammonium sulfate. Quick on the appendix here. I've talked a little bit about robotics. This is an explosive area. You'll see there the massive uptick in demand for heavy rare earths that are going to be required to build out the robotic sector, and particularly, these humanoid robots and all the work that they are going to be doing for us. So very exciting. Here is a little more detail on our resource, the 606,000 tons. I won't get into it in too much detail. This deck will be available and is available on our website. I think it's already up there, which is harenaresources.com. So you can look at it in more detail when you want to. But it just shows that we have this very significant resource, which I've mentioned many times already. Here are some photos with the AI photo is the one I've already had on the other slides. The rest are actually from the site. And the purpose of these is to show you how we built the resource. So we dug about 4,200, that's 4,200 of these pits, which you can see pictures of on the lower pieces of the pictures. And we used those samples to build out this incredible resource. You'll see a photo of one of our team there. And so you'll just see the sort of depths. That's all you're talking about. And you can see it's clay. You can actually see, you can almost see the consistency of it. It's like a clay sand, let's say. Here's our team. I'm the executive chairman. I've talked about our technical director, Alan Mulligan. Below them, we have our non-executive team who've been incredibly supportive. We'll be looking to add to our board in the new year because we're just getting into, a different phase. I was talking to somebody from the US about that today. Stephen Weir is worth mentioning. His brother is a shareholder of ours, Jeremy Weir. He's the CEO, former CEO, now chairman of Trafigura, one of the biggest commodity trading companies in the world. We also have Jeff Curry, who was former head of oil at Goldman, now partner at Carlyle as a shareholder. So we have, in addition to our institution, some very significant players within the mining space, which we love because it's, adding to our credibility. And we use them, we use their influence, and they've helped us to make connections as well. So really excited to have done this first. This is our first time presenting, in the US, let's say, even though I'm in London right now. So really pleased to have to have started that. We've loved working with the OTC. It's been really great getting our listing up there. I'm so grateful that you all took the time. And I will now end that part. I'm going to go back to I'll put a different slide up for this. And then I will, I'm going to have a look at some of these questions for you. We've got like 10 minutes, so there's quite a few questions there, and I definitely want to cover some of those. Let me see. We'll leave that one there. Okay, let me just have a quick look at these. Hang on. I think I'm going to be able to get through them all, and they're all good. So I'm just going to do them as they've come up here. First one is, are there plans for near-term capital raises? If so, what forms might they take? Equity, debt, strategic investment? Great question. Strategic investments are very much our focus at the moment, as per this slide I've got up, so you can guess with who. And we've been open about that. That's public information. So I think strategic investments are one. We have a lot of interest from institutions. You know, we're going to take some new money in Q1. I don't have a short-term need for money, actually. We have a very low running costs because of how we run the business. And also I'm just doing a lot with licensing and stuff like that. So no short-term need for money, but certainly Q1 next year. Long-term supply agreements is the next question with US defense and technology customers. That's inherent, I think, what I've covered already. You know, agencies that we're talking to want, you know, offtake to be part of their relationship. They then in turn can nominate, potentially, as they've done in other agreements which are public, have the optionality to nominate parties that they can offtake to in the US. So I think that's, you know, that's probably the next stages of where we'll be going with our discussion as part of any kind of partnership or tie-up with any specific agency. Yeah, great question here from Larry Casey. Sounds like an Irish name, so that's good. I'm obviously Irish. Given the market cap and the contained rare earth oxide tonnage, how do you view Harena's current valuation versus its peers? I'm going to put the slide back up because it's ridiculous, you know? I mean, this is how I view it. Crazy. But look, we're just coming into focus. We're just entering the conversation, I think, on the investor side. This is part of that process. So I think that's going to likely change quite soon and quite quickly. How do we differentiate from other mining companies globally? Well, I think I've covered that. Massive resource, ionized clays, great shareholders, and great potential partnerships to bring this project to production. Outside of China, that's the end of the question. How do we differentiate from outside of China? I think they are the key things. The Chinese have a different way of doing things. That's well documented. We're doing it differently. But yeah, I think we've got a good differentiation there. But a lot of similarities geologically, which is a huge win. And that's why they've had this dominating capacity, is because of their ionized clays, which is exactly the mineralization that we have. When I was involved in this project 2010, 2012, the Chinese came, they took samples, they did assay tests. So they looked at it back then as well. Current status of my discussion with US agencies, and how supportive have they been? Super supportive. I had a call with some of them today. Yeah, moving along, and that's well documented as well. You know, we're keen to continue to bring those conversations forward, and we're satisfied that we're going the right direction with them. Can you give me detail on Diane Stevens? Can you give me detail on timing and expectations for obtaining a mining license? Yeah, we think Q1 next year. The pre-feasibility study, which is also part of the question, is complete. We're actively working on that with the ministry at the moment as part of that submission for the license. So that's live and is really something that's active right now at the moment since our visit to Madagascar 2 weeks ago. What makes us unique compared to other ionic clay rare deposits? I think our location is pretty unique, and our logistics around that are very, very advantageous because of our coastal location. I think that's different. I think a predominance of heavy rare earths. I also think the ability to pick within our massive license area, you know, different levels of mineralization, because obviously it's not completely perfect. It's not a perfect mineralization across the whole piece. It varies, and we can sort of focus on more, you know, higher density zones, let's say. So I think that's different. Any discussions in relation to offtake from Brian Graham? Project level partnerships, especially with Western supply chain participants. Some, and a lot of interest and a lot of cold calls from other parties in the Western outside of China. We've been at conferences lately where we've had Japanese off-takers come to us on our stand and stuff like that. So, you know, there's no problem getting off-take. Everybody wants your off-take. That's great. We want a partner to get to an off-take product. And I think that's kind of going to be our focus. Last question. Are you pursuing US EXIM SRCI funding? US Exim has been active in Greenland. I think we've seen that. They've announced some financing for a project up there, a rare earth project. For now, we've been focused on DFC, working with the State Department. But in any event, they then can always obviously be drawn into the conversation by those agencies. They all work together, I think. So not directly at this point, but possibly going forward. Just checking if any other questions have come in there. What should prospective investors watch for as the biggest value creating milestones in the next year? I think in the next, by the end of the year and the next quarter really, will be our license upgrade with the ministry for our production license, some partnerships, potential partnerships with US agencies. I think they'll obviously be milestones. Further work we'll do on site and also further test work, which we'll obviously announce to validate our processing and our proof of concept, which is one of the steps towards production. So yeah, I think a lot of that. Next question here. In what form will you send the concentrates to the US for further processing? The mineral itself, mixed rare earth oxide, separated rare earth oxide. Yeah, we'll be sending a concentrate of our rare earths for refining outside of Madagascar. Great question here from Stephen Cars. What steps are you taking to ensure the Ampas and Dava project meets the highest environmental and social standards, especially regarding zero impact and rapid remediation claims? Such a brilliant question. Social engagement in Africa is one of the fundamental things that, in my experience, is not done well. And it's crazy, really, because without good social engagement, you can't get your project going. You need great cooperation locally, and we've just completed another social study on the ground with a team, with all the local stakeholders, and that's been really well received by the government. So we're pleased with that, and we're very focused on that, because for us, it's got to start local. It's great to have this macro conversation that we're having, and that's important, and how we're going to get there. But the real work takes place on the ground, and we're really happy with our social engagement. We think it's gone really well. Environmental is so key. Madagascar have a very good environmental code, which obviously we have to work within. We want to work within that because, again, that's just the way it is now. There's no, and I'm a London Stock Exchange main board listed company and all that goes with that. So that's just not optional for us. So we have a very great, really great opportunity because of the mineralization here to really do a rapid remediation, very low impact environmentally. And in fact, if we wanted to be very bullish about our position, we think we can return and give back remediated land that will be really useful for agriculture, of certain types of agriculture. So we do really believe that can be a win locally. And our social program is around education. I think it's important just to say that. We're very focused on education and supporting those initiatives in the region where our project is in the north. But yeah, great question. We've only got another 90 seconds here. Let me see if there's another one here. Hang on, just trying to go through them. I think that's it. I don't think there's any more. No more coming through. So I'm really grateful that you took the time to listen to me. I wish we could see each other and kind of chat about it. But we can do one-on-ones if you'd like to do that. There's a link there which you can set those up with me. I'm 5 hours ahead of you, so I'll do them to the best of my ability because I'm in London this week. And I hope you enjoyed it. It was really a pleasure to get the chance to start our US engagement this way. Grateful to the OTC, and thanks, Greg. Thank you all so much, and I hope you have a nice afternoon.